Hi there, I'm Yasmin Boland and I'm extremely excited that you've tuned in to learn about Venus retrograde. Venus retrograde is quite a rare cycle that only happens about once every 18 months, and today I'm going to be helping you to understand why this cycle can really bring up a lot of emotions as we sort of trawl through the past, we trawl through our feelings and we work out what we really value, what really matters to us, and thus how we should be living our lives. By the end of the video today, you'll understand why this Venus retrograde cycle taking place in March and April 2017 has got so many people really feeling all their feelings. So how is your love life, and how hard are you prepared to work towards having the kind of relationship you've always dreamed of? My name's Yasmin Boland. I'm an astrologer and a moonologer and a best-selling Hay House author. I've written a few books for Hay House, Moonology, a #1 bestseller on Amazon, astrology bestseller sections all over the world. My Learn Astrology book, an online course, I've done that, and plus I wrote a book with Doreen Virtue you may have heard of called Angel Astrology 101. I have a very, very active website, moonology.com, which comes up quite often as one of the most popular astrology blogs in the world. For those of you who don't know me, I've been into astrology for a couple of decades now. It all started back when I was a freelance journalist living in Sydney, Australia. And an astrologer friend of mine there was cleaning out her office, and she gave me literally boxes and boxes of the best astrology books on the market at the time, some of which were modern and some of which were quite old. She taught me how to read my chart, and I slowly but surely devoured all these books. It started to take up all my time, to the point where at one point I thought, actually this is a bit ridiculous. I can't do any more astrology because it's taking over my entire life. But certain events had transpired and I ended up getting offered my first astrology column, my first horoscope column. Once that happened, I had all the excuses I needed to keep going into this amazing subject, which truly has kept me fascinated for 2 decades. So what about Venus retrograde? Why does it bring up our feelings? Well, for one thing, Venus is the planet of love, okay? Now, when a planet retrogrades, it goes back into the past and it takes us back into the past. Now, how that affects us individually depends on where the planet is actually hitting our personal chart. And I'm going to be talking about that a little bit more in the next video. But what I want to explain here is this. Venus, love, retrograde, past, okay? It's very much a time to look at your past and think, how did I get here? Who do I have to forgive from the past? What do I need to forgive myself for? And of course, when you're thinking about questions about love, friendship, questions about lost loves and lost friendships often come up when Venus is retrograde, even on a really subconscious level. And that makes it a very emotional time because we are all going back and feeling our feelings. And in some cases, because the retrograde takes us to the past, sometimes we're actually feeling feelings we didn't want to feel at all, that we were scared to feel, but it's sort of like we don't have a choice. When Venus starts to go backwards, we have to come to grips with what we're feeling. And that's why it's a very emotional time for a lot of people at the moment. A lot of people have told me as well that they are somehow bumping into so many of their exes, their ex-lovers, and even ex-friends. That again is a very Venus retrograde thing to do. The idea is that Venus retrograde will bring us back in touch with people we once loved and have lost contact with, and will help us to work through our feelings and either to get some kind of closure, or in some cases there is the chance of a reconciliation. The other thing to be really aware of as Venus goes backwards is that it's about re-evaluation. It's about re-evaluating what really matters to you, okay? And are you living your life in accordance with what really matters to you? So say, for example, if you have a family and what really matters to you is your family. Now, of course, you probably have to work to put a roof over their heads or put food on the table, as they say. Of course, we all have to work to look after our family. But if you're working so hard that you are actually missing out on valuable, precious time with your family, for example, that's the kind of thing to reevaluate. You may say to yourself, you know what? I'm willing to work a little bit less hard and earn a little bit less money if the payoff is I get to spend more time with my family. That's the kind of question that we need to ask ourselves when Venus is going backwards. What do I really value? What really, really matters to me? And again, it is an emotional time, because when we start to ask ourselves questions like this, all our emotions come up as we try to answer these very deep questions. But Venus retrograde is the time to do this. It only happens every 18 months. So it's not like we have to be in a constant state of reevaluating our life. But every 18 months, if you want to live consciously, take a moment to ask yourself, what are the most important things in my life, the most important people, the most important situations? What do I really, really place a value on? And am I living my life in accordance with those values? Once you start to do this, your life will change. Once you start to live consciously, you will start to create the life you want. Once you identify what your values are, what really matters to you, what you really think is worth something in your life, you will start to live your life in accordance with those values and bring more of what you value into your life. This is why it's so important to live consciously, and this is why it's such a good idea to really work with the Venus retrograde. I hope that makes some sense to you. I would love it if you would leave me a comment below and let me know if anything I've said has really struck a chord with you, and if you plan to make a list of what you really value in your life, or if you already know off the top of your head what is the number one thing that you really value. Please leave a comment in the section below. I very much look forward to reading them. The next video is actually going to be slightly more astrological. It's going to be about what Venus retrograde 2017 means for you, okay? Based on your star sign or your rising sign. And remember, please do leave me a comment below. Hi, it's Yasmin Boland here again. For those of you who don't know me, I am an ex-journalist and TV producer turned astrologer. I used to work in newspapers and magazines. I started my journalism career on a small newspaper in Tasmania, which is a state of Australia, and I also eventually moved to Melbourne, where I worked for New Idea magazine, and eventually to London, where I worked on magazines including Just 17, where I was a features editor at one point, plus I worked on some of the Fleet Street newspapers, and eventually I worked at Channel 4 on a show some of you will know called The Word, one of the craziest shows ever on television. And then finally, thank God, I started to meditate, and as a result of meditating, my life changed completely, not least of which is that I stopped being a journalist and TV producer and became a full-time astrologer. I'd been studying astrology for many, many years, but suddenly it became my work, and honestly, I'm very happy about that. I love it. So I hope you've seen the first video in this 3-part series. It was all about why Venus retrograde is such an intense time for so many people. The reason is, of course, it brings up all our feelings, and as they say, we have to feel all our feelings. If you haven't seen the video yet, please take a look. So how is Venus retrograde going to play out for your sign? Well, obviously that's a very good question, and there's a slightly complicated answer for 2 reasons. One is that as Venus reverses, the Venus retrograde cycle will start in early March in the sign of Aries, okay? So Venus will be going backwards, backwards, backwards in the sign of Aries. However, by the 3rd of April, Venus will actually retrograde back into the sign of Pisces, the sign that's actually before Aries. So we have Venus going backwards in not 1 but 2 signs this cycle. Now, what that means is the energies change for each sign. So they change for you depending what your sign is, or depending what your rising sign is, depending on how you want to look at your chart. As a rule of thumb, there's a really easy way to gauge which part of the cycle is going to be most challenging for you and which is going to be the easiest. So that's what I want to explain now using the elements. Okay, so the first part of the Venus retrograde cycle from May the 3rd to April the 3rd takes place in the fire sign of Aries. Now, fire and air go together. So that means the Venus retrograde in Aries cycle is going to be easiest for the fire signs, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. and also for the air signs, which is Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, okay? So the first part of the cycle, March 3rd to April 3rd, Venus retrograde in Aries, is going to be easiest for the fire and the air signs. Now, if you are not one of those signs, it's actually kind of a good thing because it's going to challenge you, and it's when we are challenged that we grow, okay? So you're going to actually be slightly more up against it, working a bit harder to deal with the Venus retrograde issues coming up for you, all the better to evolve. And then after that, we have Venus retrograding in the sign of Pisces. So that basically flips it over who it's going to be easiest for. As soon as April the 3 rolls around and we have Venus retrograding in the sign of Pisces, Pisces being a water sign, water and earth go well together. So that part of the cycle will be easiest for the water and earth signs. So that's Cancer, Scorpio and Pisces, Taurus, Virgo and Capricorn, okay? And that's when the fire and air signs need to work just a little bit harder on their issues to make the most of the cycle. The more challenged we are by the planets, the more of a chance we have to grow. So quite often, whatever's coming up for you now is stuff that you knew you had to deal with, especially related to the two main Venus subjects, which are love and abundance. So if you're having love or abundance issues right now you know why. It's the Venus retrograde. The main thing is to do the work. The main thing is to live consciously. Okay, so I hope that helps you understand how this is going to play out for you. And please leave a comment below if you have any questions, or if you want to let me know how you're feeling, or just basically give me any kind of feedback whatsoever. I'd be very, very happy to read it. Hi, I'm Yasmin Boland and I'm here to talk about Venus retrograde. I'm an astrologer and a moonologer and a best-selling Hay House author. Some of my books are, for example, Moonology, an Amazon astrology bestseller. If you haven't checked it out, please do. I'm also the author of Astrology, which is a book that teaches you how to learn astrology. Plus, I wrote Angel Astrology 101 with the amazing Doreen Virtue. I've been writing about astrology for something like 20 years now, and it's a subject that has kept me endlessly fascinated, and I hope it's going to pique your attention too. If you haven't already seen my first two videos, now is a really great time to actually watch those first. The first one was all about why Venus retrograde can be such an intensely emotional time for people. And the second one was about how Venus retrograde is affecting you by element, basically explaining which signs are going to have an easier ride through the Venus retrograde cycle and which ones are going to be doing it slightly more tough, but also why that can actually be a really good thing. So today I want to talk about a Venus retrograde experience I had while filming my Venus retrograde online course. So I basically filmed the course right here, where you're looking at me in my home. And the thing is, whenever we put our energies into anything, things start to come up. So what do you think happened when I started to sit here talking a lot about Venus retrograde and love and friendship? Of course, my own thoughts turned to love and friendship. So, of course, sitting here with all these feelings coming up, eventually I acted on them. And what I did was I got in touch with a friend who I had fallen out with. Our falling out happened something like 2 years ago over a very ridiculous matter that I won't go into. But it caused me a lot of sadness because this friend's friendship meant a lot to me. And I knew that it was partially, the falling out was partially a result of my own bad behavior. I didn't handle the upset very well. I overreacted, as I've been known to do. And losing this person's friendship hit me really hard. So I wrote a letter. We haven't really spoken much in the last year and a half, 2 years, since it all happened. And I wrote a letter saying again, but really this time, really feeling it. And I wrote and said I was sorry again, and how sorry I was to lose her friendship, and how sorry I was for the way I'd handled things. And she wrote back something which basically said, you know what, it was 2 years ago, let's move on, and you still have my friendship. Which meant a lot to me. It really meant a lot to me. Now, I'm not sure how it's going to play out in the future, how the fact that I still have a friendship is going to look. I hope that we'll be able to see each other a little bit more, get the families together a little bit more like I used to. But the whole thing felt really healing, and I was so glad that I had done it. And I really was grateful to Venus retrograde for giving me the impetus to reach out again. And also I was grateful just for the fact that doing this course brought this up, because it really was a big thing for me. But there was something else that happened which was kind of even more special. Later that night, after I had had this lovely email and I'd responded and said thank you and it means a lot to me, I was actually at the movies, and I got a text on my phone with a beautiful picture of an orchid. And my friend that I'd had the upset with, who's not a sentimental type at all, and who's not really a cosmic type at all, sent me this message saying, you know what, Yasmin, you know what's really funny? Look at this beautiful orchid. You gave it to me 2 years ago, and I think I gave it to her to say sorry at the time when this whole thing began. She said, you gave it to me 2 years ago and it was blooming and it's never bloomed since. And now look at it. All of a sudden, it's blooming again. So for me, that was really a strong indicator that my Venus retrograde attempts to sort out our friendship had created some kind of energetic shift between us. And I will say, I did talk to my angels and guides, and I prayed to the Divine Mother for help before I sent the email. But for me, this is an example of why Venus retrograde is such an important time for us. Life's too short to be upset. Now, obviously, you know, maybe I should have just got over it, but I didn't. It still hit me. It still hurt me. So if you are feeling sad about any ruptures in your life, I would strongly suggest to use this Venus retrograde cycle to reach out to whoever it is you would like to reconcile with, because one of the key words for Venus retrograde is reconciliation. And now this brings me to telling you about the very Venus retrograde course I was talking about before. It's 21 lectures, more than an hour of videos, plus audio, plus worksheets, all designed to help you to make the most of the Venus retrograde cycle, whether you want to work on your love life or whether you want to work on your friendships, any kind of relationships, whether you just need to recalibrate and work out what really matters to you. You're going to find this course will help you to get back in touch with your values. And once you know what you really value, you're going to find it much easier to live your life in a way that will help you create the life you're dreaming of. It's a unique course. In fact, I can't find a listing for another online video-based Venus retrograde course anywhere on the internet. It's going to help you to learn how to get the love in your life that you desire, okay? It's broken into 3 parts. The first part helps you to break with the past, which is really important. Now, that's not to say you have to say goodbye. It may well be you just need to forgive and forget and move on, even if you stay involved with the same people. It's about breaking with the past, breaking with anything that's hurt you, letting it go. And there are rituals and meditations and worksheets to help you do that. The next thing is then to come into the present. And I'll be talking about how to use Venus retrograde to come into the present so that you're working on all your most important relationships, be they personal or even professional, be they romantic or friendship based. It's really important to be in the present, because when we're in the present, we can start to create the future. Okay? And the last section of the course will help you to do just that, to create the future you're dreaming of. It's all delivered to you by Udemy, a very trusted name in online courses, and you can refer back to it as often as you like because you will have it for life. So please, I invite you to register for the Udemy course. I think it could be life-changing for many of the people that do it. It's going to be a wonderful journey. It's going to be the best way to live consciously through this rare Venus retrograde cycle. So please take a moment and register now. Working with Venus retrograde really can be a life-changing experience. So today I thought I'd give you a list of 10 things to do while Venus is retrograde. So, number 1, Have a think about how much you're enjoying your life. It's so important to enjoy life. Sometimes we get into the habit of only thinking about all the bills we have to pay, or the house we've got to pay rent on or mortgage on, or all the things we're going to have to do in the future. But come back in Venus. Venus is all about pleasure. So come back now. What are you doing now to enjoy yourself? Number 2, clean out your closet. Clean out your wardrobe. Venus is about love and abundance, but she's also about fashion. And when she's going backwards, it's really a brilliant time to go through your cupboard and find out whatever it is that you no longer wear and take it to a clothes swap with friends or give it to charity. Number 3, one of the most important things to do. Take another look at your most important relationships. Are you being a good partner? Are you being a good friend? What do you need to do in order to make your relationships better? I've put this as number 3, but it's probably the number 1 thing to do when Venus is retrograde. Number 4, have a think about a creative project that you gave up on a few years back. Can you take it up again? This is the ideal time to breathe life back into a creative project you'd let fall by the wayside, because Venus is all about creativity. Number 5, surround yourself in art. As Venus goes backwards, effectively what happens is we get Venus in the sign that wherever she is, in this case it's in the sign of Aries, staying around for longer. Okay, so Venus slows down and we get a chance to do more Venus things than we otherwise would during this cycle. So surround yourself in art, whether that means going to an art gallery, going to an art auction just to look or maybe to buy, immersing yourself in art books at the library or in art books that you own, or even doing some art yourself. All highly, highly recommended. Number 6, reach out to a friend you've fallen out with. Most of us have friendship troubles a little bit in life as we go along the way, and for me, I know at least it can be heartbreaking. So see if you can get back in touch with someone who you've fallen out with, who you still care about, and see if you can make up. You never know. It really can happen. Number 7, pamper yourself a little bit more than usual. Because Venus is slowing down during the retrograde and therefore we're getting more of Venus in this part of our charts for longer, take a moment to pamper yourself a little bit more. Pamper yourself with massages, home spas, home mani-pedis, professional mani-pedis, candlelit baths, buying yourself flowers. Just remind yourself of how special you are. Venus only goes backwards every 18 months, so even if you only remind yourself how wonderful you are every 18 months, it's really a good reset button to hit. Number 8. Well, I just said about looking up an old friend you've fallen out with, but here's another Venus retrograde thing to do. When Venus is going backwards, we get a chance to reevaluate how much people mean to us. Sometimes we realise we've been taking people for granted. So if you've been taking someone for granted, this is the time to change that. But also, if you've realised that someone really is no good for you, now is the time to gently let them go. It's not always easy, but it has to be done. Number 9. Seek out the women in your life who really matter to you, who mean a lot to you, and let them know. Let them know how you feel. Remind them of why you're friends. Take them out, have them over, cook for them, take them shopping, do whatever it is they love to do, but honour your female friends. And this applies whether you're male or female.
And number 10, connect with the goddess. Connect with the goddess, be it Lakshmi or Venus Aphrodite or Kuan Yin or any goddess that you feel an affinity with. Print her photo out, put it somewhere you can see it every day, on your altar if you have one, and chant Om Shakti, which is a way of honouring the goddess, every day while Venus is going backwards. Doing all these practices, obviously not necessarily all at a time, is one of the best ways to make the best of this 42-day Venus retrograde cycle.
Today we're going to be working out what we are really grateful for, who or what we are really grateful for. The reason for working this out is because working this out will help us to move into a state of gratitude. When we are in a state of gratitude, our ego is shoved aside. And when our ego is shoved aside is when we can actually start to manifest our dreams. Now, the reason why moving into a state of gratitude under Venus retrograde is a good idea is because one thing that you can use Venus retrograde for is to remember who and what you're really grateful for. In fact, as you'll see as the course unfolds, one of the things that Venus retrograde is really helpful with is helping us to stop taking people, places, things, situations in our life for granted. I read once upon a time that it's important to be grateful for what we want and to remember that someone somewhere is wishing for what we have. Do you get that? Someone somewhere is wishing for what you have. Even if it is just, for example, the £15 that you paid to do this course. You know, some people can't afford that and they are wishing for the money to have spare money to do something like this course. So think about how lucky you are, okay? And in the meditation today, I'm going to help you to work out who and what you are really grateful for. So now, please close your eyes and start to become aware of the rise and fall of your breath. Just breathe in and out. And as you breathe with every breath, become a little bit more relaxed. And now I want you to think of someone or something or somewhere that you are truly grateful for. Bring them to mind. And just send them a kiss. Now, open your eyes, rub your hands together, put them on your face, on your heart, on your throat chakra. So, what you've done is you've become aware of someone or something you're really grateful for. Your homework from the weekly meditation this week is to do something really special for that person. If it's something that you are grateful for, then maybe you can think of something lovely to do for someone random in your life to show your gratitude for that thing that you're grateful for. It doesn't have to be connected, but if it is, so much the better. And if it's somewhere, that you said you were really grateful for, maybe you can make some plans to get to that somewhere again in the near future. Becoming aware of what you're really grateful for is a really important exercise to undertake under the Venus retrograde. And it's something I'm going to be asking you to do, or at least encouraging you to do on and off throughout the 42 days of this course. I'm going to leave it there for now, and I hope you enjoyed it.